Hello, I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Hannah.
And welcome to this as part of our celebration of National Nest Box Week. It's our very first ever Nature's a Hoot Live, which this time is all about one of the smallest and most beautiful birds of prey that we're lucky enough to have in our great British countryside.
Yes, we are very excited to be here with you this evening talking about kestrels. Live in front of the camera this time, a little bit different to recording on the microphone for the podcast.
Absolutely, isn't it just? Now, on the podcast, we're used to talking about all things nature really, from badgers and butterflies to wildlife and well-being. But this time, it is very firmly all about the windhover, aka the kestrel.
Absolutely. Now we are really looking forward to bringing you tonight a premiere of our first documentary, which was filmed back in June 2019 when we were in very different times. Can you remember what that was like, Tom?
Only just. I mean, even today we're having to socially distance to this day.
Yeah, how life has changed. Now, we do hope that the film will bring you more of an insight into our conservation work, and if you support us, exactly what it goes towards. Later on, we'll be joined by Miriam from our bird team, and of course, Scout the Kestrel, very exciting.
Yeah.
And Matt will make an appearance. He is our UK Conservation Biologist who works in the field to conserve these amazing birds.
Yeah, and he was the man who was good enough to allow me to follow him around for the day. So we could get an insight into what the conservation work was all about. And he'll be with us after the film to answer some questions, both from Hannah and I, and also for all of you watching at home as well. So if you've got any burning questions about kestrels or our work with them, pop them down in the chat and we'll do our very best to put as many of them as we can to Matt. Any that we don't get a chance to answer this evening, we'll do our best to answer them later. Now it's important to mention that showing this documentary and having this event this evening is a great way for us to show you what donating and supporting to us can do. Any sort of support you can give, any donations, big or small, are vitally important, especially at this time.
Yes, they certainly are. Now, we were both lucky enough to spend that day with Matt, weren't we?
Yeah, we were. And for me, I work on the bird team, so I get a chance to work with and fly our fantastic birds of prey. That's something I wanted to do since I was very small.
Yeah.
So to go out in the field and see these birds up close, the wild birds up close, well, that was a dream come true, especially when it's alongside such an expert as Matt.
Yeah, it really was a lovely day. And Matt is someone we don't really get to see very often because he's so busy out in the field. So it was great to spend that time and get a glimpse into his work.
Definitely. And it's that very rare opportunity that we'd like to share with all of you now. So here we go then, part one of our premiere of our Kestrel documentary, as we head out on a typical day with Matt checking nest boxes. So Matt, we're obviously making our way away from the trust now. Where are we going today?
We're heading for a site just along the A32 near Westmead. We've got about 1,000 sites where we've got nest boxes, but for today's purposes we're just going down to south central Hampshire.
Okay. And how do you pick and choose where you're going to go each day?
Usually it's based on the status of each box, so I try and get round all of the boxes in April and May, so I know when they've laid their eggs. This is kestrels, and so I can work out when I need to return to do the ringing, weighing, measuring and monitoring and fledging of the chicks. So it just turns out that today's a good day for this particular nest box.
And so we're expecting to see some young chicks in the nest?
Yeah, the chicks in this box should be around about 3 to 4 weeks old, so they're pretty big. Today I'll be taking the chicks out of the box, weighing them, measuring their wing length, measuring the length of their legs, fitting them with a BTO metal ring and an individually identifiable colouring. So it's a plastic ring that you can read in the field, so it means I don't have to catch the bird again. I can watch where it goes and keep track of it once it's left the nest. Once I've finished doing all my stuff and putting them back, and it's the last time I'll see them before they fledge, I'm not sure I want to admit this, I always wish them good luck.
So your love of birds then, has that been lifelong for you?
Yeah, pretty much since I was about 7 I've been obsessed with birds. I always knew what I wanted to do. So.
And do you know what started that?
No, not really. I think I was fortunate, although I lived on a housing estate, it was right on the edge of a city. So, so much of my time was spent out with my mates, just playing in the fields. So we'd always be out and you'd always be doing stuff you weren't supposed to be doing, but seeing lots of things. So you're exposed to hares boxing and lots of birds around everywhere. So, and it just grew from that. We've got some volunteers who go out regularly to try and get a fix on where these birds are. So they go out in places where we know kestrels are likely to be and try and read the colourings. And once we've got information on a colouring resighting, so if a bird is seen at a particular location, I try and get the volunteer to also record what the bird's doing, whether it's a male or female, to try and confirm my determination of its sex when it's ringing time, and try and build up a picture of movements, because obviously with around about 250 kestrel boxes, I said we've got 1,000 boxes, but that's across the 4 species we cover. With 250 boxes and around about 60 to 80 used each year, that's a lot of chicks produced. So there's a lot of things to monitor, and I can't do all that on my own. So I really need volunteers to help try and see these birds.
So how far would you expect to travel in a day when you're doing your rounds, Matt?
Usually it's around about 100 to 200 miles in a day, but that's all quite heavily pre-planned. So I know when birds are going to be ready to ring, or I know the route that I want to take, and I work out a circuit that means that I can get round lots of boxes in the fewest miles.
After a 45-minute drive from the Hoot Conservancy Trust, we arrive at the site where we check our first nest box. How do they look, Matt?
2.
Fantastic.
At least 2.
What have we got the net there for, Matt?
Well, if the birds are quite mature, which these should be, they get quite jumpy.
Right.
So it helps me keep them in the box so they don't scatter. So here's one.
Matt carefully removes the chicks from the nest and places them in a cotton bag. His expertise means that the chicks are well looked after throughout the process.
There's number 2.
They've certainly got a healthy set of lungs anyway.
Yes. And I leave the net over the entrance just in case the parents fly past, so they know the nest isn't empty. Okay. It shouldn't be a problem anyway, because with them making so much noise, the parents know that they're still here.
Is that kind of an average clutch size for these birds?
No, not really. At many sites this year, they've been having 4s and 5s, so it's a bit lower than expected, but there's still 2 eggs up there. So,
okay.
But they're healthy, so that's good. Let's go and do the ringing.
We're sat here in the shade. It's quite a sunny day. What are we going to do next?
Well, what we want to do is weigh and measure the chicks. We want to try and get a decent estimate of their hatch date. So by measuring the length of the primaries, so the longest feathers on their outermost part of their wing, it gives us a means of working out how old the birds are, so how many days it is since they hatched.
Okay.
We'll also fit a BTO ring, one of these, which stays on the bird for the entirety of its life, and one of these, which is a plastic material which has a unique 3-digit alphanumeric code, which allows me to then follow birds and identify them in the field. So you can't do that with these, but these have a much longer lifespan. So as we discussed, we like to get volunteers involved. So we're trying to build up a network of volunteers to go out and look for our kestrels. I call them our kestrels, but they're everybody's kestrels, obviously. But yeah, what we'd like to do is for people to keep an eye open with binoculars, check any adult looking kestrels, so any fully developed kestrels that are flying around, check those that are on wires or on posts, because that's when they stand up, and these rings are then quite nicely visible on their legs.
Now, this has been a lifelong passion for you. Do you still feel that spark of enthusiasm when you're doing your job?
Yeah, how can you not, really? Because it doesn't matter how many times you see lots of these things, there's always something slightly different about it. There's always something rewarding and uplifting about seeing kestrels taking their first flights, or seeing barn owls flying past in an area where you didn't see them before because you put a box up, or having little owls sitting down just fledged beneath the box, lined up on a road verge. There are countless things that are enjoyable. So a good weight for a kestrel at this age is about 220, 230.
Absolutely tiny then, really, aren't they, as a species there?
Yeah, they're not very big at all. So with the bag, this one is a little bit small, but it sometimes gives an indication of whether it's a male or female, because females tend to be larger. On a male, they're usually quite nice, sort of slaty blue, with very little in the way of black, but they don't tend to have the sort of gingery coloration on them. This one's a bit of a mixture of both. So
right.
It's probably a female, but I wouldn't like to say for certain.
We expect that coloration to get more prominent as they get older.
Yeah, it can take a few months to sort of grow in, but if it's a bright male, it's usually quite obvious when they're this age. So next we'll put the metal ring on. These have a unique code on. They also have a web address, which, if the bird is unfortunately found dead anywhere, and it's got one of these on, if you send the details, the number that's written on this ring or inscribed on this ring to the address, you'll get the information about where the bird was ringed. At the same time, I also get an email telling me where the bird's been found. So it allows me to get some idea of how far they've moved and how long it is since they were ringed. I always feel incredibly privileged to do this, because, how many people do? It's a wild animal.
If you feel like you're able to, please consider donating to us here at the Hoot Conservancy Trust to help out the work that we're doing.
It's been a really tough year for everybody, but for us here at the Trust, it's been particularly tough because we haven't been able to open our doors and welcome visitors to come and see our birds. So any help that you may be able to give or want to give would be greatly appreciated by all of us.
The best way to help us out, if you'd like to further, is to donate to us. Of course, it's been a really tricky year for most people, and especially an organisation like us, a charity, it's not been easy at all. So please, if you want to help out further, that would be lovely if you could just donate. Thank you.
Well, it's been a very difficult start to the year for everybody, hasn't it? And yet again, we've had to close our doors, which of course is completely understandable for everybody's safety. But each time we have to do that, it directly affects the future of the Trust. And until we can get the green light to reopen our doors and welcome everybody back in and do what we do, then that future is uncertain. And so at the moment, we're doing whatever we can throughout this lockdown period to help to secure that future. And there's lots of different ways that you can help us to do that. You can simply come and sample some of our takeaways from Feathers Restaurant, and we're doing those 3 days a week. You could support via our Meadow Appeal, or you could simply donate with whatever you can give. Every little bit helps, and all of the details on how you can do that is on our website. I really can't wait until we can open the doors and welcome all of you back in to come and see us and to continue our mission, the mission to conserve birds of prey around the world. And I hope that happens very, very soon. Thank you.
Wow, amazing to see Matt working there. That was just part one though, so please do stay tuned for part two, which is coming very soon. Now we would like to introduce our special guests, Miriam Nichols from the bird team, and of course, Scout the Kestrel. Hello.
Thank you so much for coming in and bringing Scout with you as well, live in our studio, a real live kestrel here with us. You've always been Scout's trainer for quite a while now. How long have you been working with Scout?
4 years.
Wow, yeah.
Well, nearly 5.
Yeah, so And you've been working with her since she first arrived here at the Trust?
Yeah, so she was bred in captivity in the New Forest, a centre in the New Forest, and she arrived here when she was 5 weeks old.
Wow.
I first set eyes on her when she was in our National Bird of Prey Hospital, in a little bay there when she arrived, and I went down to meet her, and then she very quickly moved in at home with me. And that's been it ever since. Well, she's not still living in the house. She has her own aviary now, but yeah, I've been working with her since she was 5 weeks old. So
you're probably the person that knows her best in the world. I mean, I've done a little bit of work when we've kind of worked alongside one another. How would you describe her character?
She's definitely assertive.
Right. Very diplomatic.
Yeah, trying to pick my words. But she's, I think you find it with a lot of the smaller birds actually, that they've got quite big characters and personalities, and she's definitely no exception to that. So she can be quite feisty when she wants to be. She thinks she's much bigger than she is. But she's very confident, and at the same time she can also be quite shy and quite nervous about certain things. So yeah, she's a real character.
Absolutely. She's already made her mark here on our set. You can see that at home, but she decided to have a little toilet break just before we came back from that clip.
Exciting stuff being on TV.
Absolutely, yes. Good luck. It's good luck.
Lovely. So what is it for you that makes kestrels so special to work with, Miriam?
I think for me, growing up in Devon and in the countryside, this was a species that I saw on a daily basis, over the fields near where I lived, and so fell in love with kestrels as a species. And then I was just fortunate enough to get involved with them when I started my career working with birds. But to be out in the countryside and to just sit and watch kestrels hovering, they're fascinating. They're fascinating birds, and they have such a difficult time just surviving. It's difficult for us to get our head round just how hard it is for them sometimes. But that's what they are built to do, and they do it very well.
So you said when you first started you were working with kestrels, so she's not the first kestrel you've worked with?
No, I'm a little bit obsessed with kestrels, and so I was very fortunate at the start of my career. The gentleman that trained me, he actually had a breeding pair of kestrels, so I got to work with kestrels very early on, but also every time that Jack and Jill produced young every year, we would have the chicks from 3-4 weeks old and start to work with them before they would go off to other centres or wherever they were going to go. So
doubly good luck.
So yes, I was involved in a lot of training with a lot of birds at young stages.
Nice.
And train them right through to sort of adults. So yeah, I am. It's possibly my favourite species.
Lovely.
Ever.
We're not supposed to have favourites.
Sorry.
So that's very telling. That really means something.
It really does. It really does. I just, I think they're incredible birds.
I mean, we know that they're experts at hovering in the wild, and we've seen you working with Scout. How do you train her to hover with you?
Well, I mean, it's not so much that I train her, that's inbuilt within her.
Yeah, of course.
And her nature and her natural style of flight is to use that technique to search and find for food. So as a trainer, you need to exploit the things that they're naturally good at.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that I've learned over the years working with them is that if you want them to be really good at hovering and you want them to be really good on the wing and flying, fly them and train them like you would any other falcon, which is to swing a lure. So it simulates them chasing something in the air, but you can hide that lure, and if you get your timing right, you hide it at just the right time when she's coming into the wind, into the breeze, and she's got that supporting her, and then she learns that she'll get rewarded for being for holding station above me. So the training really, it's about timing, and it's also about making sure that I fly her in conditions which are going to give her greatest chance of success.
Yeah.
If it's a very, very flat day, she's going to find it very difficult to hover for long periods of time. So if I want her to have long periods of hovering, then flying her on a windy day is much better, much more successful for training, because she's got all the natural elements to help her.
I think we can go to a clip now of Scout doing just that.
Yeah, and you can see them doing exactly this when you're driving along and you see them over a grass verge or over the fields when you're out walking, and they'll fan their tails right out when they head into the wind, beating their wings really quickly, and like you said, they're really having to work hard just to stay, just hanging in the breeze. It's so strange, isn't it? Moving 0 miles an hour stationary is harder than, say, their cousin the peregrine stooping at 200 miles an hour.
Exactly. They've got a much harder job to kind of be successful and find their way, get their opportunity at the right time. And you always feel quite sorry for them when you see them hunting over a field or a road verge, and they're working so hard, and then they're there for a minute or more, and then nothing. They have to move and they just go and hover somewhere else, and you just think, oh, you must be so in need of whatever you're looking for, and to use all of that energy and not have a successful sort of stoop down onto something from that it must be frustrating, but frustrating for me watching. Obviously.
That's just the way of the wild for them, isn't it? Yeah, and in fact we've had an opportunity over the last couple of months really. There's been a wild kestrel moved into our savannah arena. Those of you who visited us before will know what we're talking about. One of our arenas at the back is kind of a bit wild, isn't it? Purposefully to kind of allow the wildlife to enjoy that area. Right. But we get to see it in the wild every day, pretty much every day as well, don't we?
It's very active, that little kestrel at the moment, and not sure how the interaction will work with these two.
Interesting.
We'll wait to see.
It'll be interesting.
Miriam, thank you so much for coming along and talking to us, and of course for bringing Scout along.
Very welcome.
She's been very well behaved, hasn't she?
She has.
No, it's wonderful to see her, so thank you. We'll let you get away and take her back to her aviary and settled in for the evening.
Thank you.
Now, you might have spotted there during that little piece of film that Scout's favourite place to fly is up in our meadow, Reggie's Wildflower Meadow, which had its 25th anniversary last year. And you might have also spotted that we launched our Guardians of the Meadow appeal. It's a way for us to boost our funding after a tricky year, to say the very least. It allows us to kind of support our work and also to secure our future.
Yes, now that was amazing, Miriam, thank you, and thank you to Scout as well. So I can tell you that we have already got some donations coming in this evening, so a huge thank you to everyone who's already donated. That's amazing. And like Tom said, thank you so much if you've already signed up to be a Guardian of the Meadow.
Yeah, the support that you're giving us is absolutely vital. It's been a rough year for all of us, and one of the main ways we get funded here at the Trust is from all of you coming to see us, so having visitors through the doors coming in to watch our displays, and so not being able to do that, it's left our funding kind of decimated really. So we're working very hard to secure our future, and there's loads of different ways that you can help and support by maybe becoming a Guardian of the Meadow, donating, and maybe a little later on in the year you can come and visit us when it's safe to do so, or perhaps try out one of our bird of prey experiences. Also keep an eye out for other events that are coming up a little bit later on in the year too. Yeah.
So we left Matt in part 1, ringing kestrels with you, Tom. So let's get back now to Matt and Tom back in the field.
What kind of keeps you going as a conservationist?
That's a difficult question. I love birds. I can't think of anything that I'd rather do. So although it's perhaps not the most politic thing to say, I think of it all from the perspective of the wildlife that I enjoy rather than people's perspective. And I understand that's important, but it's our responsibility to make sure that all those things that we see around us have the best opportunity to do as well as they can. So yeah, that's what I focus on, and that's what I love doing. This next measure measures one of the longer primaries on the wing. So I tend to always use this same one.
So these ones they're still growing through?
Yeah. So by doing this, it allows me to work out how long it is since the bird hatched by comparing it with a graph that I have. So now I measure the width of their legs at the narrowest point, and then just the length of its beak. Okay. So I use a little bit of cement which melts the two bits of plastic together. Doesn't have any effect on the bird. I get a lot of it on my fingers, but it just helps to keep those together. It's the same sort of glue that you use in plumbing. It sets very quickly, so that means it rotates nicely, moves up and down the leg, so it's not going to cause any sort of problems to the bird. And that's it.
After successfully weighing, measuring and ringing the first chick, Matt repeats the same process with the second young kestrel.
You only have to see the size of this one though. It's very fat.
So will Mum and Dad have been and fed these chicks already this morning, do you think?
Probably. Usually they'll bring maybe somewhere between 14 and 20 prey items per day.
Wow.
So it's quite a lot of work for the parents.
Absolutely.
And if you imagine that with 6 chicks, at this age they're generally quite nicely behaved. They're not too bad at all. When they're slightly younger, there's a lot of kicking, a lot of scratching, a lot of biting.
So it's highly competitive in that nest then between the chicks?
Yeah, although before I go there, when I just stick my camera up to have a look, they tend to be sat there quite contentedly. They're not doing much, they're conserving energy, they're not wasting anything at all. 69.5. So I like to know what happens, I like to know where they go. I get slightly upset if I realise that some haven't fledged. The majority that gets to this age do leave the nest successfully, but occasionally I find some that don't make it, and that's not a happy day.
It can't always be sunshine as we got today.
No, it can get quite cold, it can get quite wet, and also there are various frustrations. You know, it doesn't seem like it would be stressful, but trying to get between boxes before things leave can become a bit, you know, it's always there in the back of my head, even at night. Last thing at night, I'm thinking, have I missed those chicks or whatever? But the most frustrating things are when either I can't get to a site, or if something's happened. I've had a couple of sites where the boxes have been destroyed by people for no apparent reason. Right. These are both done, so we should put them back.
Time to go back in the nest. Good luck, BD4.
Yeah.
And I'm told that everything you see, you write down.
Yeah, I do. For every day I have a list of everything seen with some extra information, some more detail, not just birds. It can be unusual plants or unusual insects, butterflies, you name it. There are even some fish in here.
And it's all in that little black book?
Yeah, I've been doing it for a long time, more than 10 years, having a list for every day, having notes for every day. So I've got lots of these books at home.
And you've got plenty to write down from today?
A reasonable amount, yeah.
En route back to the Trust, we stop off to check on another nest site, this time just for a visual check of the young birds and their box. So how many nest boxes are up as part of this project, Matt?
Well, the project's been going since 2008. I started 2011. From about 30 boxes then, we're now up to about just shy of 1,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you have to check all of those?
Well, I do get other assistance. So I've got some volunteers at sort of partner organisations, if you like. So the South Downs National Park Authority, I have help from them. Some of their rangers check boxes for me. And I have other volunteers that check some boxes as well. So it's not all me.
Have a little bit of help.
A little bit, yeah, it's all useful.
And the expensive things with nest boxes?
They are, but we've been trying to go towards using materials that are cheaper, obviously, because some of the materials, like this one, which is made of ply, only last for about 3 or 4 years, which is not great. So even if they're proper external grade materials, exposure to the sun, exposure to the rain, ice, snow, and all the stuff that Kestrels produce means that they don't last that long. So that box would have cost about £15 to £20 initially to make. Right. That's just material costs. But we're moving towards a plastic material. Again, not ideal, but that works out at around about £5 to make, and they have even longer lifespan than these. So it makes sense, yeah. 4.
4 chicks?
Yeah.
Wow.
About 2.5 weeks old.
So is that too early for ringing?
It's okay to ring them at this age, but because there's a chance that not all of them will make it, I prefer to leave it until they're slightly older, so that I know then the outcome of the nest. Because if I ring them now, I probably wouldn't return again until after they'd fledged. Yeah. So then I don't really know what's happened.
So are there any aspects of the Kestrel project that people can get involved with?
Yes, we've talked about the colourings, so people can send us their observations of colouring birds. There is also, they can let us know if they see or hear of any nesting kestrels in our area, so anywhere sort of in central southern England. We're interested to receive any sort of reports of nesting kestrels. And there's also, we have a larger project looking at estimating population density of kestrels across southeastern England. That involves people walking certain routes for me at certain times of year and recording the birds they see, not just kestrels, red kites and buzzards as well. So they can get involved with that. That's operating across 8 counties: Oxfordshire, Berkshire, Hampshire, Surrey, East Sussex, West Sussex and Kent. So if they want to get involved with that, then just drop us an email and we'll get back to them with information.
And does the outlook feel good for the project and for the work of the Trust?
Yes. You know, we try and garner as much support as possible. We try and extend our reach and get the message out to more people to have an interest in these species. And not just these species, all bird species, nor wildlife. So although with the Hawk Conservancy Trust, it's not just about raptors, it's about everything, because everything works together. So I think as long as there are young people getting interested in birds and the wildlife and conservation, allied to the army of older people that are interested, then yeah, the outlook should be good.
Conducting our conservation and research work costs a lot, but all contributions, however big or small, are extremely valuable. Just £10 could help us buy the rings to fit to a family of kestrels. £25 could give a kestrel family a home. £100 could provide the equipment to help us monitor bird of prey populations. And £500 could help us buy nest box construction materials for a whole year.
And we're very lucky to have Dr. Matt Stevens himself here in our little studio with us this evening. Thank you so much, Matt, for coming in. We've got a few questions for you, if that's okay. If we didn't answer them in the film already, we've got some for you this evening.
Okay.
The film, is it a good example of a typical day for you out in the field?
Yeah, probably between sort of May and mid-July. Yeah, that's the time that I'm spending most time at kestrel boxes. But it sort of changes at other times of the year as well. So earlier on I'll be at tawny owl boxes, later on sort of the same time little owls, and then further on into the season all the way through until October, sometimes November for barn owls.
And that's an interesting point actually, because we don't just work with kestrels, do we? There's all sorts of other birds that we're working with.
Yeah, I mean for a lot of the time for the RNBP, the Raptor Nest Box project, it is those 4 species: barn owl, little owl, tawny owl and kestrel. But we also do other work as well. We do quite a few surveys for things, so in the autumn and the spring we engage lots of volunteers to help us perform surveys to estimate population sizes of various other raptors.
Sure. So are we, how long have we been working with kestrels specifically though?
Well, this project has been going, well, I've just had my 10-year anniversary at the Trust.
Oh, congratulations!
So yeah, I mean, from my perspective, since 2011, but before that we had another 3 years. So we've been going for about 14 years in total.
And that's all still nest box work?
Mostly nest box work, yeah.
So can you tell us how kestrels are doing in our study area?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I mean, the surveys help inform us and tell us exactly how they're doing to a certain extent, but you can never get a perfect answer on that.
Yeah.
In our study area, they're doing reasonably well. They're pretty much staying even.
Okay.
So, yeah, not too bad.
Okay, and then I have a question from Simon from the comments. What is the current status of kestrel populations in the UK, and are they declining or growing?
Yeah, that's another tricky one.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, pretty much in the last 30 years, the population has shown sort of a gradual decline. So they're now amber listed. So if you imagine that traffic light system of conservation status, amber is not doing so well, but not doing as dramatically bad as other species. Kestrel populations estimated in 2016 at around about 31,000 pairs in the UK, which is about 25,000 fewer than there were sort of 20 years prior to that. So again, they're estimates, but that's the best data we have. So the appearance overall is that they're not doing so well.
And what do you think the future looks like then for kestrels?
Well, in our study area, probably reasonably good, and hopefully across the rest of the UK as well, because lots of farmers are getting engaged and involved in undertaking lots of agri-environment schemes and making the habitat better for wildlife as a whole. And if the habitat's better for wildlife as a whole, then it's better for small mammals, it's better for kestrels, better for barn owls, better for lots of other things as well.
Absolutely.
There definitely seem to be birds or raptors that lots of people tend to see as well, don't they?
Oh, yeah.
So people possibly watching might be surprised that there are species that we would say they're in decline overall.
I think they will, but I suppose it depends on your age as well. If you're past it a bit, if you're getting past 50 like I am, then you will remember as a kid seeing them all the time during car journeys alongside the motorway. But in more recent times, certainly in the last 20, 30 years, they've not been quite so abundant.
Right.
And that's quite obvious that they're not so abundant.
Okay.
So you like wildlife of all sorts, but birds is kind of a specialism, I suppose.
My thing, yeah.
Now, we saw in the film that you write everything that you see down in little black books, don't you?
I do.
And you've been all around the world seeing all sorts of different birds and wildlife. Is there any one thing that you would say that was like the perfect moment, that's the thing I really wanted to see and I ticked it off my bucket list?
Well, as a kid in the sort of 70s, I remember having a sort of sticker album where you could collect stickers and you put them in scenes, and it would have all different sorts of wildlife, but mostly birds. One of those was Huatzin, which is a South American bird, a real prehistoric looking thing, and from about the age of 8 or 9, I desperately wanted to see one of those. And it was only relatively recently that I got to see those in Peru. So that was the thing that, it was a bit emotional.
Yeah, I bet.
So that was the thing that I really wanted to see. And I was really pleased to see those.
And
I mean, they're not that they're extremely rare, but it's just, something to enjoy.
If you've built it up since you were a kid, it's
definitely
a big moment, isn't it? And there's still things on that list that you want to see?
Yeah, I mean, with around about 10,000 species globally, there's lots to see.
Yeah.
And I want to see all of them, really. I don't have a hierarchy of the best bird and the worst bird because they all have their own things.
Yes.
There's a particular piece of behaviour, or there's a particular bit of plumage, or something else that makes them all special to me. I can understand other people liking bright, shiny birds, but I like the little brown ones as well.
The underdogs.
Yeah, all of them.
Now, we did have another question sent in from Stephen. He says, when should we expect our kestrels to start occupying the nest boxes here at Kilmston? I'm keen to see if they'll come back again this year.
Right. Well, hello, Stephen. They normally start looking around and prospecting for nest sites from the end of the year, start of the new year. So if the male will show the female around to lots of different sites and she will eventually pick one. If they've used a site successfully in the past, quite often they'll return to that site, and they'll normally be at that site from around about February onwards. Sometimes it's earlier, in some cases they might be there pretty much all through the year, but generally speaking, as long as they're there before sort of mid-March and you start hearing them kiki-keying and doing all their display noises, then it's a good indication that they're going to be back and using the box.
Okay,
so fingers crossed.
Stephen, there's still time to have those kestrels come back for this year. Thank you so much,
I've
Matt.
got a couple more
Have you?
questions, actually.
Sorry, everybody.
I think we've got
questions.
one more coming in
Come
as
in.
well, but I have one here.
Go on.
And this is from Helen. When do kestrels nest? Where do kestrels nest if not in nest boxes? Good question.
Yeah, it is a good question. They like a variety of places. Quite often old crows' nests. So old corvids' nest is a good place to find kestrel nests. They will also use lots of artificial nest sites, so things such as the top of walls in barns, in straw stacks and haystacks. Quite often where a limb has broken off a tree, so something like an ash tree, which quite often have limbs break off, it leaves a sort of semicircular hollow in there, and they'll use those. They'll also use lots of cavities in trees generally, and quite often not in designed kestrel boxes for kestrels. They'll use nest boxes for other things, so barn owl boxes as well.
I've heard this story actually, that there can occasionally be barn owls and kestrels nesting in the same nest box at the same time.
Yeah, with this particular design of nest box I've got, there's a platform on the front and then a sort of entrance in the top that drops into a chamber in the back. And quite often, well, I think in at least 6 occasions, I've had barn owls in the main chamber and kestrels on the front as well. Both successfully.
In the same box?
In the same box.
Amazing.
Yeah.
How good must that habitat be for two species to like that to successfully?
Or it could be that there's a shortage of nest sites.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're clumping up together. Yeah.
Actually, this leads into another question I have here from George. What are the key landscape features for supporting kestrel populations? Nice question.
Yeah, it's a good one. Well, quite often it tends to be rough grassland, places where short-tailed voles and other small mammals, so shrews, will occupy. And those are generally places that don't have an even surface of grass. So not a short grass, so the sward height, so the height of the grass is sort of tufted and lumpy and a bit bumpy all over the place. Lots of matted bits of folded grass underneath that the small mammals use to run underneath. So any places that have those will be good habitats for kestrels as well. So generally the headlands of fields, so the grass margins, arable areas as well, because spilt grain provides places for small mammals to use, ditches, hedgerows, that sort of place.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Is that all our
That's
questions
all the
now?
questions.
Thank you so much for sending questions.
Oh.
Alice is like hot-footing it over here. Alice is on the keyboard over there, checking the feed as it's coming in. We've got another
Two more.
Hopefully not too tricky.
Okay, not too tricky, hopefully. From Julianne, are kestrels the only hovering birds of prey in the area, so maybe in this country?
No, we do, well, occasionally you'll see buzzards that appear to be hovering, but that's normally because there's a headwind and they're just sort of hanging in the wind. And sometimes, very rarely, red kites will do. But we do get a winter visitor, rough-legged buzzard, which is able to hover properly, just like a kestrel, and quite a big thing. But normally it's only a winter visitor, and you see that sort of east coast and up the eastern side of the UK in the winter.
Okay, and one last one from Simon. How else can we help kestrels?
Well, really, it's all about landscape. It's all about providing those areas and places where small mammals are going to do well. And if you, again, provide the habitat, if you provide the food source, kestrels will do well. Really, that's the key message and that's the key thing.
Yeah.
So if there's plenty of habitat, plenty of decent spaces for wildlife to occur as it normally would, then that's going to do the best thing it can for kestrels and everything else.
Brilliant.
Matt, thank you. We're genuinely not going to keep you any longer now. Thank you so much for joining us. And
no problem.
Thank you to everybody who's sent in a question for us. Hopefully we've answered them. If there's any we haven't managed to answer this evening, then we'll do our best to answer them a little bit later. And of course it leaves us to say thank you all so much for your continued support, because, well, it's been very, very tricky for all of us. Keeping in touch with us through our social media pages is very, very important to us. We're very grateful for you doing that. When we reopen again, when we're allowed to do that, one of the best ways you can support us is by coming in to visit us. We've extended our arenas so as many people as possible can come and watch our flying demonstrations every single day. And of course our experiences and events will continue as soon as we're able to do them.
Yes, now we would obviously love to welcome you back as well to do more live events like this about our work. So we do have a question for you, and that is, if you joined us again, if you enjoyed it, we hope you did, if we were to make it a fundraiser, whether you would be willing to pay. So we have a link in the description box to a poll where you can let us know what you think. And if you do let us know, that really does help us plan for next time. But for now, thank you very much to Matt, and thank you of course to Miriam, and to all of our viewers for tuning in to watch our wonderful Kestrel documentary. Please do like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yeah, new subscribers really do help us. Now, for more from Hannah and me, make sure you keep your eyes peeled and your ears peeled for the next episode of our podcast, Nature's a Hoot, where we'll be inviting naturalist and science communicator Lucy Lapwing onto the show.
Yes, very exciting. So until next time, stay safe and do make sure you get out into nature if you can. Thanks everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Just wanted to say a massive thank you to each and every one of you for supporting the work that we do here at the Hoot Conservancy Trust.
If you've already chosen to support us through donations, then thank you very much.
I just want to say a massive thank you, not just on behalf of me, but on behalf of all the rest of my colleagues, not just the bird team, but all the rest of us that work here at the Hoot Conservancy Trust. Most importantly, the wonderful birds we work with every single day. Of course, the main reason for us being here is conservation, and by you donating, you've helped out massively towards saving birds of prey in the wild.
I'd just like to say a massive thank you to everybody who's been helping to support the Trust throughout these difficult times. As many of you will know, I've been working here for over 20 years and seen lots of different changes and positive changes throughout that period. But never would I've ever imagined that there would have been an uncertainty for the future of the Hoot Conservancy Trust. But that is reality. Really hope we can open our doors soon. The support that you've been giving us and the generous donations and everything that people have been doing for us has been pretty overwhelming, to be honest with you. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, and a huge thank you from all of our team and of course the birds. And I can't wait until we reopen those doors and see everybody coming back again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.